Hello, Legacy Mathematicians. So today we're going to multiply and divide rational expressions. So basically, we're multiplying and dividing fractions today. You're going to want your own notes, pen or pencil, and then you may need a calculator, but probably not exactly needed. So our objective for today, we're going to learn basically how to simplify rational expressions accurately. We've done that already, but also today we're going to learn how to multiply or divide them as well. So, the rules. Multiplying fractions. Remember, guys, you just multiplied straight across when you were multiplying fractions years ago. So when we multiply them, let's say we have 1/4 times 1/5. So what we did is we did 1 times 1, and we did 1, then 4 times 5, and we'd get 20. That was done, right? We just multiplied the numerators, multiplied the denominators. Now, dividing fractions, we had to flip the second fraction, make it the reciprocal, and then change it to multiplication. So it looks something like this. 1/4 divided by 1/5. What we did is we kept the first fraction, 1/4, changed to multiplication, and flipped or changed the reciprocal. Because remember, dividing fractions is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So then I would have 1 times 5 and 4 times 1, 4. And then we always simplified our answers if possible, which neither of these two simplified, but we normally would simplify as we went on. So, how are these going to actually look? They're going to look something like this. 2x squared minus 10x divided by x squared minus 25 times x plus 3 divided by 2x squared. That's disgusting. But here's what you're going to first want to do. You're going to want to factor everything first. See if you can factor every numerator, every denominator first before you start trying to do anything else, okay? So, let's factor this numerator first. Well, there's not 3 terms, so AC method's probably not the best way to go. I think we can take out a greatest common factor, though. And it looks like it's 2x, right? We can take a 2x out. So I would have x minus 5 left behind, I think. Let's try to factor the numerator now. X squared minus 25. I think that's different of squares. So that's that one that came into 2 parentheses, right? One was an x, another one had a plus, the other one had a minus. And then since it's 25, I think it was 5 and a 5, right? Because 5 times 5 gives me 25. Okay? X plus 3, that does not simplify at all. But what I am going to do is put parentheses around it so I remember it's x plus 3. Because remember, guys, killing kittens is not nice. Okay? And then we got 2x squared on the bottom. Now, what you can start to do is you can cross-cancel things. So if they're diagonal to one another, you can cross stuff out. Also, you can cross things out if they're on top of each other. So I'm going to change my color here so I don't get lost. Let's go purple. I notice I have an x minus 5 on the top and on the bottom. They can cancel off because one's on the top, one's on the bottom. Ultimately, I'm going to get a factor of 1, right? X plus 3 doesn't have anybody. I do notice, though, I can cancel out my 2's because they're diagonal to each other. One on top, one on bottom diagonally. And when ultimately I would multiply the bottoms together, it would be on the bottom, one on the top, right? And then the other thing I notice is I have an x here and I have 2 x's here. Remember, guys, this is technically x times x because it's x squared. So I can ultimately take this x out, cancel it with an x down here. So ultimately, guys, I just have 1 x left behind. Those ones are the ones I find kids a lot of the time forget to cancel just because they don't see just an x and just an x on the bottom. Okay? Now, I can now figure out what's on the top. So notice this both canceled out. I'm just going to have an x plus 3 left behind. Let me change back to my red. So I'm going to have x plus 3 left behind on the top. I got x plus 5 left behind, and just a single x, because remember, we took an x away, right? So I'm just going to have x and x plus 5 left behind for a final answer. Alright, let's try it again. So I need to first, let's try to factor this part. Greatest common factor looks like he'll do it for me. So I'm going to take a 4x out. Looks like I'm going to have an x left behind, right? Because 4x times x is 4x squared. And then minus 1. Oh, this bottom part. Looks like I'm going to have to use the AC method, right? Because it's trinomial, 3 terms. So I have a negative 3 for my AC, because 1 times negative 3. And I need to multiply to give me negative 3, but add together to give me 2. 3 and negative 1 will do it, right? Because 3 minus 1 is 2. Now, since my A is 1, I do not need to use the box. It's going to make my life a lot simpler. So I'm going to just be able to write x plus 3, because that's one of my first factors, then x minus 1 as well. Do you see how that becomes that if I multiply? Makes your life a little easier. You don't have to use the box as many times. Same thing on the top here. My A is 1, so let's do my AC. 1 times negative 6 is negative 6. I think 3 and negative 2 will give me it, so I can factor that into x plus 3, x minus 2. And then 4x looks like he's just going to hang out on the bottom because nobody can go into 4x. Let's see if we can cancel some stuff. Well, I noticed I got 4x and 4x on the bottom and the top, so those guys can cancel. I have an x minus 1 on top, and I have an x minus 1 on bottom. Those guys can cancel. And then I have an x plus 3 and an x plus 3 diagonal to one another. So let's cross him off and him off. So on the top, it looks like I am left behind an x minus 2. And absolutely nothing on the bottom. So my final answer is x minus 2 out of this gross problem. X minus 2 is my final answer, which is pretty hilarious if you look at it, how disgusting it can get and how nice of an answer you can ultimately get out of it. Alright, so let's factor here. Looks like he can't factor at all, because remember, factor first. X squared minus 4, he can factor, so I can make that x minus 2 and x plus 2, right? Because it's a difference of squares. And this one, notice guys, it is over 1. Because there is no denominator, we're going to put it over 1. My ACB 9. So it looks like I'm going to have a 3 and a 3 ultimately, right? Because 3 plus 3 gives me 6. So I can make this x plus 3, x plus 3. Now let's see if we can cancel. Looks like the x plus 2's are going to cancel off. That's about all. So it looks like I'm going to just have the x plus 3's left behind on top. And then on the bottom, 1 times x minus 2, which is just x minus 2 ultimately. So my final answer should be x plus 3 times x plus 3 over x minus 2. And the final problem, dividing. Now dividing is nothing different than multiplication. There's just a tiny bit. But for division, first of all, always factor. Now, do not try to flip and factor at the same time because I find students get super confused. So what I would first do is factor everything. Factor, factor, factor. Okay? So I first see 2x, he can't factor, so I'm just going to put 2x on top. This can have a 3 taken out, so I'm going to take a 3, so that's going to be x minus 4, right? Multiply just an x. Let's just take an x, so that'll be x minus 2, right? And then down here, I have an AC of 8. So negative 4 and negative 2, right? That makes negative 6. Yeah. So then my bottom, since my A is 1, I can just make it x minus 4, x minus 2. Okay? Whoop. We're still dividing. Now, You can't start canceling things because we're dividing. So what we're going to now want to do is keep the first fraction the same, but switch the other one around. So it's actually going to be this. X minus 4 times x minus 2 over x times x minus 2. Like that. Because we are dividing, guys. We do need to switch or flip that second fraction like we normally do when there's just numbers. Now, let's start canceling things out. So I got x minus 2 and x minus 2. They gone. X minus 4, diagonalies, gone. Looks like I got an x to cancel out and another x to cancel out. Whew, who's left behind on the top? Just a 2? And then on the bottom, just 3. So my final answer, guys, after all of that factoring and all that work, is just a simple 2/3. And that's the end of this video. See you later, Sabers.